The generic card problem. So make sure you guys smash the crap out of that subscribe button so you guys don't miss out on more awesome content. So this is very interesting to be seeing kind of popping up as a little bit of a discussion is Konami's printing too many generic negates again. And it's like, yes and no. I know that's such a bullshit answer to say, but truth be told at this point, like, generic cards are the things that tend to sell sets, but if we're really looking at something like Silhouette Rabbit pulling out the Apophis Trap card, is that really an argument for like a generic problem? Because I don't really feel like it is. Most decks in the current design space do tend to feel like they have limiters on really some of the tools that they can kind of bridge into. And that's not necessarily like a terrible thing, but you gotta remember, guys, generic cards are cards that you're going to need for multiple decks. You know, if you really... We could turn this video into the mulch armies where, broken cards, every deck's abusing them, yada, yada, yada. We've had that discussion. We understand that, those cards generically were a coin flip for the power that they were kind of given for the format, but that's not everything that we think about here. I guess your next thing kind of turns to like Forbidden Crown, for example. Is Forbidden Crown a generically broken card? Yes, it is. Crown does much more for any decks than it really should, because being able to use Crown to basically put a monster locked in attack mode for you to crash over, it's actually hilarious, because we've all seen the lock that yummy in attack mode, watch my big Lunalight monsters go bonk, 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 and it's just like, what happened? It's like, you lost the game, bozo. There's nothing that, we can really do to change this. It's just bonk, 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 down comes the stick, and it's just... There's nothing that can really be done to change that. It's just Konami looked at the flavor of Dark Lords and said, hey, there's usually a forbidden card associated with these. Let's go ahead and print another card to go along with this. And that's where Crown came from. Generic cards sell sets, people. I hate to tell you this. Now, not every set can naturally have a new generic card, which I guess just kind of comes into the argument back in the day where we were like, oh, Konami will just ban certain cards and then print lesser powerful versions, and then we'll just be using those staples for a while. There was a time that I feel like that this was a mentality, but it's also tied into the Forbidden and Limited list, very much so. Look at Max C being locked up in permanent jail where, we don't have to deal with the BS of that. They had to take its power and split it across the 3 power gems of Yummy to basically create a fraction of its power, because they still want the TCG to have these counterbalancing tools to be able to use. It's a pretty straightforward game. Now, we enter back into, I guess, the discussion here of generic cards being problems. What context do you think that too many generic cards could be? Because we've had many formats throughout the years where if we allow archetypes to not be specifically locked, we use Sky Striker, for example. Engage is one of the most infamous cards in the game's history for just being this chaotically broken card that not only would be played in Orcust in 2019, allowing them basically to search for Hornet Drones. Hornet Drones itself didn't have any real, limitations on it, which definitely, I think, made the card a lot more powerful than what we kind of expected for that time. And even in modern times, too, Engage pops back up in Yummy as one of these tools. The question then becomes, should we focus more on archetypal locks Or should we allow archetypes to have access to cards that tend to generically break out? Another case in point, look at Borreload's Savage Dragon. Savage being a completely generic level 8 synchro monster who basically had the tools to generically put any link monster on it as an equip to have multiple levels and negates. Should you have made the argument that it should have been a Dark Dragon tuner monster? Probably, but I think Konami likes to leave certain cards more generic than others. And I think that's fine. I don't think every single archetype needs to be like Cardfight Vanguard syndrome right now, where Standard and Cardfight Vanguard, very much their card design is no longer generic, following things. It's specifically named. Now, if Yu-Gi-Oh! Did this and was like, for the rest of this turn, you can only summon Sky Striker monsters. For the rest of this turn, you can only summon Dark Dragons. I mean, we have type locks, like the Dark Dragon, Dark Monsters. You can also summon late monsters for the rest of this turn. We've even got the harder locks that say you can only use this card's effect the turn that you've not special summoned monsters except for this. We have severely punishing locks like that. I mean, look at Shaddoll, for example. Lev Shaddoll Fusion was one of those cards that we just got with those extremely harsh conditions on them, only being able to play it within the pure build. Konami does take note of these designs. They're not an entirely bad company, I think a lot of the time they do tend to know what they've got to do with the design in that space, and I appreciate them for it. So, no, I don't think we have too much of a generic problem right now. I think what we are seeing is the game has shifted to allow more generic cards to see play. I look at the floodgates, look at anti-spell, look at there can only be one. Look at those cards and how the meta has shifted with Yummy popping up where there can only be one is now running the show in the side deck out here, allowing us a huge opportunity to abuse this card. It's things like that you have to take a look at and go, is this just a result of the shift in the meta to accommodate these cards? Or is it just a overall shift in things? You gotta remember, we've had cards throughout the years that have been completely worthless, and all of a sudden, boom, Token Collector being one of those. It just took Sword Soul popping up for Token Collector to become an extremely broken counter card, and then that card just rode back off into the sunset, never to be seen again. Same thing with Enneacraft, a lot of intervention. Cards like that are cards that were designed from the early days. It's cards like that do show up, and they do quite a lot. But at the same time, we need to take a step back and realize, hey, Yu-Gi-Oh! Has got a rich history of 25 years worth of cards, people. There's never going to not be a time where something pops up that we're just actually shocked about. There will always be an interaction somewhere in the back, somewhere back there, that is going to just be so mind-boggling or so interesting. It might not even be a relevant meta choice at this point. It might be a take that you're just like, oh, that's really cool. Maybe Assault Mode using, Stardust Assault Mode coming back into meta. That was really cool. But, we can make the argument that Stardust Assault Mode's a generic card. Should that be allowed at this point? But it's like, how good is it going to be? What's the payoff for this idea to be good? And people, I do think a lot of this is just where the meta has shifted. So, generic cards are a good thing for the game. They do tend to cause a lot of problems, I think, in the matrix of players wanting game balance. But I don't think it's really possible to balance things out in a way that, we can't not print generic cards. They'll always be there. So what do you guys think? Please do comment down below, tell me what you guys think, and I'll see your beautiful faces back here in a day, guys. Patrons! Thank you!
Thank you so much for watching. Check out these other videos.